flying, my friend.
You bet. Not a problem.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back once again. It's another episode of your favorite podcast, which obviously is Keepin It Rio. That's why you're here. That's why I'm here. My favorite podcast. And I think that should just be a well-known fact to kick off this episode. I am super ecstatic for my guest today, who I've been wanting to have on the show for well over a year. And this man is an innovator. He is a leader in the industry. I believe he is the absolute authority in his specific niche that he's become the master of. And today we're going to learn a lot. We're going to have a great time. We're going to educate. We're going to entertain, and all the stuff that you look to Keepin It Rio for. Without any hesitation whatsoever, ladies and gentlemen, please allow me the honor of welcoming today's guest, Chad Hedrick, to the show. Chad, welcome to the show, bud. How's it going?
You bet. I appreciate it. Like I said, I kind of feel bad because I know we've talked and reached out a couple times about getting on the show, and I guess that thing called life has always seemed to jump in the way. And then next thing I noticed that was 4 months ago or 6 months ago, and I reached back out, or you reached back out, and then and then 6 months later go by, and it's like, dadgummit. And I keep telling, I told my wife a couple times, like, I gotta get on his calendar link so I can get a spot. And then it's one of those that pull it up and go to hit the button, and then something over here catches my attention, and I go to that. So, but I'm glad to be here. And like I said, it's been a long time coming. I was bragging on your podcast cover, all this looking awesome. You got this thing looking sweet. We're
having fun with it, and that's all that really matters. And the moral of the story is there has been a huge buildup to this, so we are not going to disappoint. We're going to bring the fire. This is going to be one of the most energetic and fun episodes that we've had. And I think this is 214 or 215, something awesome. Like that. So we're going to enjoy it. And let's just kick this bad boy off, Chad. I saw you at IRE a couple weeks ago. It was great to run into you and chat. You were there representing your product, and we'll get to the product here shortly. But to start the episode, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into the roofing world, and then we will just kind of, like you said, shiny object over here, shiny object over there. We may not ever finish this topic, but we're going to cover a whole bunch.
That's right. Well, like I actually, I started. It goes back kind of funny because I actually got into college at the age of 17. So I was a young when I had to have my parents sign me into college. Nothing says your dating game is going to be awesome in college than have your mom sign you in, since you can't even sign. You're not a legal adult yet. So here I am, at all the registration, looking around, going, man, there's some cute girls here and everything else. And then I'm not even allowed to sign my own name. My parents have to sign me in because I'm only 17. But I was one of those that, I don't know, I just I still to this day can't sit still, didn't really and so I dove into college and said, you know what, I don't mind college. It wasn't bad. It was actually kind of fun, but I don't want to be here very long. So I dove into college and got a 4-year engineering degree, a 2-year drafting degree. I am 17 hours short of finishing a master or a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering and electrical engineering. So I would have had a triple engineering degree and a drafting degree if the college I was at. The problem was to get my 17 hours I needed was going to take 3 years because they didn't offer the courses, but like every third semester. And I just I'm out. I'd love to have that. It'd have been cool to have a triple major. Not that I'd used it any, but it'd have been cool to say I had it, had a little feather in the cap, but engineering got me into the kind of like that mind of in the construction industry. And I went to work for a civil engineering firm in Jefferson City, Missouri at literally, like I said, I graduated when I was barely legal to drink. And so here I am at 21 years old, and I'm working for an engineering firm, already graduated, got 6 years of college degree under my belt. In 4, I went through everything. If we had a Christmas break, I took courses over Christmas. If we had in the summer, I took an 8-week course. I wanted everything out that I could get. And I went and I worked night shift. I worked Scholastics, the big Clifford the Red Dog.
Oh yeah, I know Clifford.
I worked at the Scholastics factory, the book factory where they make all the books and we ship them all out and all that stuff. I worked night shift. So I would go to work at 10 o'clock at night. I would get off at 7:30 in the morning. I'd have class from 8 to 4. And so I'd go home from 4 till about 8, 9 o'clock at night. And that was when I slept from 4 to 9 at night. And I'd done that for 2 years straight through college. That's what got me through college, and I just was one of those that it was a miserable 2 years, but I figured, hey, the time's going to pass anyway. Might as well get paid and get my degree and be out of here and get started. So when I got hired on the engineering firm, at the first, what I was actually working on was we were doing a little bit of bridge stuff. They were one of the largest bridge engineering firms in the Midwest, but they had a project coming that was doing all the ADA accessible elevators for all the county courthouses in the state of Missouri. Well, when you get into these old buildings, you've got your basement floor that's like 10, 12 foot. And then your main 2 floors might be 9 or 10 foot ceilings. And then these older ones that have 3 stories, you go up to the 3rd story and that thing might only be 8.5 feet. There was no reason to waste space up there. So they would cut these little short. Well, so when you go to put an elevator in, 8.5 feet ain't enough for a shaft to get everything through. So we had to blow through the roofs of all of these different courthouses. Well, you might have metal, you might have mod bit, you might have an old gravel built up. You had no clue what was on there until, you took all your assessments and everything. So we had to come up with something when we were doing all of these courthouses that allowed us as the engineering firm to spec something that would allow that to go through and some sort of temporary / decent term solution to all those different substrates. And crazy enough, they hand you this book that's like 4 inches thick and it's a spec book. And I'm sitting there flipping through it and actually stumbled across at that point in time. And everybody will laugh when they hear the name. They've heard about it. There's a company by the name of Conklin who actually has a coding system that's been around for since 1976. One of the originators of the coding company, or coding industry. And they had a little ad in there, a little 2x2 ad that talked about fabric reinforced, coding systems that could do. And I'm like, wait a second. I got to look at all the substrates, and it's called the bench ply. It's a bench ply system, benchmark ply system. And I'm like, wait a second, that says it can stick to this, to this, to this, to this. And I'm like, hey, if we can cut the shaft fairly close, do some counter flashing, this would give us a basically fabric reinforced liquid flashing that we could seal these things up until the county had enough funds to put a new roof on or had somebody to be able to come in and actually re-roof that area, because you just never, timing them to get everybody there at once was impossible. And so that kind of what got started. I started speccing the liquid applied fabric reinforced coating systems around 88 elevators. And fast forward, 6-8 months later, we get a knock at the front door of the engineering firm I'm having. A couple guys in suits come in and come to find out after a couple long meetings and some things called audits, the owners, which always had 2 boys that worked at the company and got paychecks every Friday, but never were at the company. Well, come to find out, they hit us for about, I think, $300,000 in payroll tax evasion. Oh. So that company went from having 50, 60 employees to within 4 years had 6 employees and just completely impaled. And so I was still there when we were down to about 8. And so I knew something was going to have to go, because I'm like, they were 7 and 8 paychecks late. I mean, 8 straight paychecks we hadn't got on time. Some of them were 3 weeks late because they couldn't make it. And so I stumbled across a trade show that had ironically, a Conklin booth at it. A guy was there holding the same sample that I'd been speccing for all these things. And I'm like, wait a second, let me see that. So I'm sitting there pulling on this thing and everything else. And we sat and talked for 45 minutes about, potential on sealing metal roofs and things like that. And like I said, that was in 2000. And I left there as a 25-year-old kid thinking, what, this might be something I could do. I'm from southern town in southern Missouri. And I'm like, I know enough farmers that got metal buildings and those type of things. And so I decided, what, I might try this. Well, in the meantime of that, the reason why I was at the trade show was I had quit the engineering firm and went to work for one of the bridge building companies that I was doing inspections on. So I was a field inspector also doing bridge inspections. And I went and was inspecting this bridge. We got to know the guys really well, liked the crew. And so when I quit the engineering firm, I just went straight and went to work for a bridge that I actually designed on paper inspected in the field, then turn around and went and built that bridge. So there's not too many guys can say that. I've seen one bridge at least in the world, that went from literally the piece of paper that was designed to the field inspections as they started pouring footings and get some of the columns going, to where I end up working for their company for several months. And we finished that bridge to the finish and everything else. Well, then the following bridge was about a 500-600 yard pour one day, and I was on the finishing end since I was the young bull, and I decided that I could do more than I could, and I ended up tearing my back muscle in half. Just ripped her in two, and it put me down. Couldn't breathe, couldn't walk, do anything because of it. And so after a few shots of hydrocortisone and everything else, and finally could get moving, I had to get out of the house. So I went into this trade show, and that's where I stumbled across the booth. And little did I know that after I left that booth and got to talking to those guys and kind of got something set up with them as a distributor, about 60 days later, I was at home with my parents and just went through our little hometown and went up and talked to a half dozen people and said, hey, give you some bids on you got any issues on those metal roofs? And before I left there, I think I had like $30,000 worth of contracts sold. And that was, as a young 25-year-old guy, knowing the profit I was going to make on them was cool. That was a nice thing. But the most beautiful thing for me as a single 25-year-old man was it was in October, and bow season in Missouri starts October 1st. So I was like, wait a second. I could go to self-employed right at the exact same time that deer hunting season starts. What better of a life can a man have? So I quit the engineering firm, or I quit the bridge building firm, and decided to go on my own and start coating commercial roofs. And that was in October of 2000. And crazy enough, I've never done anything since. I've never collected $1 from a job since, and I've never done nothing but roof coatings since October of 2000. And so it's been a heck of a ride. Had some fun up and downs, and have done some really cool things with it. It's got me into places and seen things in buildings and places all over the United States. I mean, we've personally installed in probably 17, 18 states. And then I've been involved on the consulting side with other contractors on probably close to 40 states. And it's really been something that I never would have guessed in my wildest dreams. Some of the places it's taken me and things I've seen and learned that go on inside some of the buildings in America that I'm like, it's changed a few things of both from eating habits, from things that we purchase. And there's a few things that have changed. I'm like, nope, that ain't happening. I've seen the inner workings, can't do it. So yeah, that's kind of my little humbling story of a 17-year-old engineering student getting turned in then a few events of that, you wouldn't want to happen to anybody, but it's what got me to where I'm at. So I guess that was God's story for me.
That is amazing, my friend. And I absolutely love it because that's the same thing. I tell people I've been in the roofing industry 27 years now, and it all started on a Friday when I was having a bad day at my job, and I was on my way home. I see this roofing supply company is hiring for a CDL driver. I pull in there. I don't even remember what happened at my other job that made me do this, but I pulled in and I've never left. And that morning, I had no anticipation. I never thought that I would ever get into the roofing industry, yet here we are. We're chatting about it 25 plus years later, and that is awesome. Before we get too far into this story, though, I do have to ask you this. You're now an innovator. You are the first guy that I've ever had on the show that's actually designed and had a bridge built that he came up with. So tell us where this bridge is located, because if I'm traveling the country and I come across the Chad Hedrick Bridge, I want to stop and take a picture of it. So where is this bridge?
It's actually about 15 miles south of Lebanon, Missouri, on the White River. I tell my
White River, Rio Blanco, baby. Gotta
tell
love it.
Tell my family some stories about it that they still are just like, and I even look back at it going, man. But we were down jackhammering the bedrock out, and there's these big pilings around you, and I'm 20 feet below water. So the water's 20 foot above your head around these metal pilings, just leaking through every crack. And we're sitting there with big sump pumps, pumping it out so we can jackhammer out all the bedrock to get it down to the size we need and the elevation we need to be able to pour our footings. And, in the middle of the winter, it's kind of a weird, eerie sound to hear ice and stuff hit those. And it's your jackhammer, you got to take you have to have a 3-pound hammer on the side of you to smack the broken ice that comes out the exhaust of it. And it was always one of those, my brother's done some crazy things with me and everything else. And he's always said, he goes, you couldn't pay me to get in the bottom of that hole, knowing that there's water, whatever, at least 12 to 15 feet of water above your head. That is one thing of that steel lets go. You'll never know it. You'll never even have a second thought. It's over. And that same bridge, then I went from there after we poured all those footings and all those columns. I was the one that they were all like, we got to hang these big outriggers to be able to do the kind of what you call the cantilever, the overhang of your bridges. And, because you got your beams, your support gird is here. Well, then it goes out farther. And they're like, they got these big old brackets that are just, they're basically just big triangles that have big wrenches on them that you can, they got to level them, get them all leveled to and nobody wanted to go out there. So heck, I throw the strap, I throw the harness on, throw the D-ring around hanging on a piece of rebar, and I'm hanging 35, 40 feet above water over the top of these big old bridges going across there. They're handing me out these dudes. I'm hanging them on, hooking on everything else. They hook them. And I literally go down for, oh my gosh, it's probably, that bridge was, I think, 280 feet long. So I'm going down every 36 inches, hanging another bracket, hanging off of a harness, with a double D-ring, hoping that they both don't fail. So it was one of those that I've told my boys, I'm like, there's a lot of things, you do as growing up and everything else that you'll probably never remember and everything else. But I'm like, I can honestly say, being able to say that I physically, and just like the house we live in, the house I built it from the footings up by myself. But I'm like, it's kind of cool to be able to say I've literally been from the bedrock of that bridge. I touched every single piece of that thing until we literally poured it and put the tarps on it to let it water and cure out. From start to finish, I've got a bridge that I've touched every ounce of from A to Z. But before that, actually got to do the paperwork and do the design on it wasn't my design, but I was the engineer that was involved, and then done all the field prep. I had to go be the engineer on that, the field engineer. So I got one bridge in America that I can say that, hey, I know a lot about that bridge.
That's one more bridge.
And I'll never forget it.
People I know. That is amazing. And I'm thankful for you for telling me that story, because wow, I didn't expect that, to be honest. I
did
kind of
learn some
expected
things.
the whole intro into the roofing industry is, I didn't mean to get into it, but the path to get there is awesome. So that's pretty cool.
I will say I did learn some things that I think every engineer should have to go backwards. You should have to go work in the field before, because I still have a couple aha moments. I'm like, how are you supposed to get that rebar in there? That's the stupidest. Who would design that and do that? And then they all look at me and they're like, do you really want to answer that question, Chad? I'm like, no, I just put it on paper. I didn't design that part. I'm like, that's the stupidest thing I ever see. And I'm like, I was like, trust me, I'll mark that down. I'm going back to those guys. I'm like, you can't bend 1.5-inch rebar in an S curve and get it to fit inside this little spot without it causing, a burn through, which means that rebar's too close to the concrete edge to where there's going to be issue with spalling, and, the rebar is going to get moisture to it. I'm like, it's not physically possible. It looks like a dot on your blueprint. It looks like it would be fine, but it physically can't be put in there on the field. And, I'm like, so those are things I think every engineer should have to spend 3 to 6 months on a bridge building crew before they do, as a mentorship, or however you want to say it, before they go get actually their engineering degree, because there would be a whole lot of crap designed different in the field if they would have had to do it backwards. And I can say that I've done both ends of it, and I understand where some of the stuff is like, it's just absolutely ludicrous why they build some things. It's like, you've never tried to do that, have you? And they can physically say, no, they haven't. Well, I have. And I've cussed myself a couple of times on that job. I'm like, dude, that was the stupidest. That dot does not fit there. So, but yeah, that's always something I always go back is like, start at the end and come backwards, and you'll change things at the end once you get here. I promise.
That's right. And as a residential roofing specialist, I would like to say this. If the inventor of the Dead Valley by any chance watches this video at any point in time, what Chad just said applies to you as well. So let's make that happen. And whoever invented that needs to figure out what they were thinking that day, or what they were hung over from, or whatever happened, because what a horrible, horrible design, a horrible innovation.
What a nightmare that who knows that would linger for this many years of all the issues because of some stupid decision.
Yep. It's one of my greatest revenue sources. So I guess I'm okay with it, but I wish I didn't have to spend so much time fixing those things.
I agree.
So,
I understand completely.
That is awesome. Let's dig in now, my friend. We've got 20 minutes into this episode. We've got a good vibe going here. We're now just starting in the year 2000, and you are getting into your own business. Like you say, it's bow season. You're about ready to go out and have some fun. You've discovered Conklin products. Tell me a little bit about this journey with Conklin, because I am familiar with the product, and I know to this day it's still very widely recognized.
Yep.
Tell me a little bit about how a guy who's fresh out, just getting into this deal, sees this at a trade show. What was your experience as far as saying, hey, you know what? I want to become one of your applicators, one of your reps, whatever it's called. How does that process look for a young man that's just getting into this deal?
It honestly, I had zero experience, didn't know squat about roof coatings other than the fact that I knew that I had been speccing that exact product for those engineering jobs when I was doing those courthouses. But that is the one thing, like I said, to this day, there's a love-hate relationship in the industry about Conklin. They've got great products. The market, the way they come to the market is the biggest issue with guys, because it is a direct sell or a multi-level marketing type of avenue. Like I said, I have zero issue against the company or anything else. It's what got me in the industry, because I needed that at that point in time, being as young as I was and having zero experience. I needed the guidance a little bit that the guys that were involved with me that actually really gave me that guidance to get into there. And so for people who have zero experience, and like even a lot, I didn't have any construction. I mean, I was working engineering, but really, growing up, me and dad built a couple houses and done things. So I was always handy and doing things, but really was never in the construction or roofing trade, especially. So that kind of, they did give that kind of like beginner, hold your hand steps to really get things going. That was a blessing to me, because it got me the ball rolling. It wasn't but a few years into it that I started having a few issues, because I felt like I was missing things that I kind of got guided because of they only had, basically one product, had a couple different systems for different type of existing roofs, but they only had one product. And basically they were only dealing with acrylics. And so anytime something came up, whether there's a potential to bid something or a product or a project that really acrylics weren't designed really well for, they held water, they didn't dry quick, the roof didn't dry off fast, or those type of things, I was still pushed and leaned, they'll perform there, because just being blunt, at the end of the day, somebody was at least getting a percentage off of that sale. So I think there's a little bit of that goes on, and maybe even a lot of it, should say, because I think those products, you get so confident because you've been told that they're going to perform. And they are great products. They're one of the best products out there probably. And, but the best product won't perform in a place that's not supposed to perform. That's all there is to it. You shouldn't put products somewhere where they're not supposed to be. And that was the only problem, is it led me and other guys I know of down that avenue of, just it'd be fine. Well, yeah, it is fine until it's not. And then you got to go back and fix it. And I yet to this day, 25 years later, have ever had a screw up that we did when I went back to fix it, made me any money. They've all cost me, it's so the saying it's okay and it's fine. You're right. It is until it's not. And then when it's not, the problem that it cost me 7 years down the road is way more dollars than it would have cost me if I'd have just done it right the first time. Even though I thought I was, because I was so confident in the product and so confident in everybody else's opinions of it. And the bad thing is they were taught the same thing. That's why they were so confident, and it's like the blind leading the blind a little bit. So I started having a few issues there, and not necessarily with, like I said, the products, just with kind of that I guess you could say that culture. And so I started looking, and I realized, hey, there's a lot of other things out there, and there's a lot of things out there that fit a certain need and a certain maybe type of application that acrylics just really shouldn't be used in. And so I kind of veered off a little bit, and I came back again and kind of it was in and out type of thing. And then when I got to, which I'm sure we'll talk about when the Roof Rabbit actually came involved, it really opened my eyes for the fact of it opened some other chemistries and some other things I got to talk to other manufacturers about. And so when I seen that, I realized that, hey, I'm bottlenecking myself into only these results. These are the only solution I have. So if I go somewhere and, you go to the doctor and you're going to a heart doctor and you've got a broken foot, he ain't going to help you much. So even though he's a doctor, and so that's why I felt like I was like, hey, I'm a roofer, a roof coating contractor, and I'm showing up and I only have one arrow. I got one arrow in my quiver. And if this arrow doesn't do it, I'm useless to that customer. And I didn't feel like I was bringing much value to the customer when all I had was the one solution. And so that's what really started getting me into the learning the chemistries, learning the industry, learning all of the substrates, trying to figure out and learn more about the actual substrates when they go down to make sure when I go to a job that I have a decent idea, at least if that job was done right or if it's a total botch job, because a lot of these guys are getting led to, if it's stand still, turn it white and, coat it, and it's like, no, it's like, you really need to know, for one, you may need to repair that existing substrate. And if you can't repair something on there because you don't have a clue how it's supposed to be done to begin with, well, what good does it do you coating it? Because you're not even fixing it right before you coat it. So you don't give your coatings a standing chance from the get-go. And so that's really what got me to deep dive into the industry and felt like I needed to just truly immerse myself in as much as I could with the industry and learn as much as I could, and then take that and go back and really, so I kind of had a little, I won't say I pulled away because we still were doing jobs, but we scaled way, way, way back. And then when I got to the launch of where we were doing stuff with the Roof Rabbit and other things, that's when I seen that all that time of me thinking and learning and all that, gathering that info, finally all came to fruition of why I needed it. And that's where we're at today. It's like I said, if all the things I did in this slow time, I guess you could say, is really came back, 100-fold.
Yeah. And that speaks volumes. That's why you're at the top of the industry. And that's why you're considered a leading authority, because you do recognize, okay, one size doesn't fit all. And there's still a problem with that to this day. One of the things that I hear the most about coatings is, they fail, they don't work, they're just a paint job, whatever. But I can also see if you put the wrong thing on the wrong substrate, if you don't apply it correctly, if you don't prep it correctly, guess what? It's like putting a shingle roof up with no nails. It's going to fail. It's not going to work. So you go through a little bit of this process in your early phases and you realize, okay, I need to, learn a little bit more. We need to kind of change the way we're doing things so we can serve more people. When you start off in this as a youngster, you're getting your feet wet, you're just starting to get out there. Tell me a little bit about the process that you go through to actually go in, present yourself to a business that may need your services and explain to them what you're doing, because it probably sounds like, almost, I don't even know the correct term, but it sounds too good to be true, or it sounds like, well, whatever, that's going to be a temporary Band-Aid. How do you get yourself established to the point where you realize, hey, this is going to be something that I'm going to be able to continue to grow, that I'm going to turn into a career that 25 years later, I'm going to be on Keepin It Rio talking about? How did the initial phases and what were some of those reactions that you would get from those people? Obviously, in a small town, probably, you weren't pitching multi-billion-dollar deals like you're doing now. But what was it like for you as a young man getting into this and finding your way and finding the right people to work with, and then explaining to them how this works and convincing them, for lack of a better term, that you were the best option?
Well, that part of that, I think the youth and ignorance really helped thrive some of that, because at that point in time, 25, single, living the dream, playing 150 to 175 softball games a night or a year, just absolutely living have my race car. I'm doing drag races, 20, 30 weekends a month or a year. And so, just living the true dream. And I was making really good money as an engineering firm. At that point in time, stepping straight out of college and in the early 20s, and, me and back, and you're talking in the now that's back age of myself, but that's back in the 90s, and making $60,000, $80,000, living 2 minutes from work. I could go in early and be done by 2:00 in the afternoon if I wanted to, if I got there early, because we just had specific, I had my work task needed to be done. As long as I had my hours of that going in, I was free to go. So when I got started, like I said, I did stumble. Luckily, I had a couple metal buildings in my hometown. One of them was actually, I was a concrete plant set right here. And then the next building over was the fire department. And the fire department on the north side, because the southern prevailing winds all summer as they're making concrete would blow fly ash and all of those airborne chemicals, and it'd go over the top of this 6 or 512 pitch roof. And then the north side was solid rust, and they would paint it every year, and it would come right back. And it was just eating this, thankfully it was real metal. It was old style real metal, and it's real steel. That's why there's rust involved. But and I, set them up. I'm like, hey, if we coated that, you wouldn't have to worry about paint. And they're like, oh, you got to be kidding me. We've painted this thing 15 times, Chad. There's no way your coatings are going to do that. So, once I explained it to them, showed them all the steps and everything else, kind of stumbled in. It was only a little 5,000 square foot roof, but that roof is still on. I done that in October of 2000, and that roof is still on and performing, has not been touched. So it's 25 years old and has not been touched. And I keep telling them they need to recoat it, but now I'm actually at the point now that it was steep enough, and it'd be more than I don't even want to do anymore. So I don't have that youthful in me that was the couple decades back. The first number was a lot lower than it is now. So that 2 is now turning into a 5. So that's not near as much fun. But my drive really was, I did use that engineering firm side of being able to talk to people about, reducing thermal shock and being able to the sustainability of being able to go to these, especially metal. Metal is what I focused on. I focused on metal roofs because I knew they were everywhere, and there's, acres of them. And I just knew that I didn't know of a metal building after 10, 12 years that didn't have a drip leak somewhere. I mean, it's just, they expand and contract so many times. And in the Midwest where we're at here in Missouri, we can have 28 degrees at daylight and be at 78 degrees by 2:00 in the afternoon, and maybe back to 30 before dark. I mean, it's the thermal shock is just so high, and it really puts a wear and tear on those buildings. I mean, when you go up and find fastener holes that are wallered out 1/8 of an inch on both sides of a fastener from that metal just expanded doing this back and forth, I mean, those buildings are going through heck. And I just knew that if I could go in there and show them the cooling side of it, along with, when you hand the person what I call our MR sample and show how we treat fasteners, we treat the seams, and, we treat the rust if we have a rust with the rust primer, and then we coat this thing. I've had building owners literally look at that hole and they go, well, if you do all that, it can't leak. And I'm like, you're right. It can't. I let them sell their self. And then obviously you're trying to do everything you can to work within that budget that they have. But even back then, back then was even more the cost of what we were doing coating systems for what it was cost to take metal or put new metal on we were less than half. Well less than half. And so that was an easy sell, when they seen that. And once I got a couple of roofs under my belt of some smaller ones, well, then we started landing, the 50 and 80 and 100,000, 150,000 square footers. And it was when it was just you, my brother. I convinced my brother the following year to quit his job that he had full time and come join me and work for me, in which he did for 15 years. But that it was me and him and one cousin. When my cousin got out, the first day he got out of high school to the day he had to go back to high school, he worked with us every day of the summer. And that was my crew for 7 years. That was my crew, was either a high school kid or a relative for the summer. And then me and my brother took all of it before then. And after that, it was a 2-man crew. And, we were doing $500,000, $750,000 worth of contracts with 2 and 3 employees. And so they were making good money. I was paying them good, fed up their lunches and everything were taken care of every day. And they made good money, and I was making dang good money. So I just kept dumping money into advertising and marketing, and just, I never thought in my wildest dreams, especially as a mid 20-year-old, you'd dump $20,000, $30,000 into direct mail campaigns, And looking back now, I was dumping as much money as a high school teacher was making in the state of Missouri for a year. And I'm dumping that into strictly a marketing campaign that disappears in 60 days, I mean, so, but it's what got us to where we're at, I mean, literally after almost 10 years of doing that, I still get calls. I don't even live in Jeff City, Missouri anymore. I'm 5 hours north or 4 hours north of there now. I still get calls from Jeff City and Columbia, Missouri, where we've done all the work for so many years, asking. I mean, I just done a recoat on a job last year from a guy calls me. He's like, hey, you put our roof on in, I think in like 2006. And I'm like, he had to send me a picture so I could even find it. I didn't know who he was. I'm like, are you sure we did that job? Then I got the picture. I'm like, okay, I remember that job. And so we went down and done a recoat on that job. It was still in shape. It only had a 10-year warranty on it. So he'd been out of warranty for 10 years. And we went in and cleaned it all up and recoated it. And I've got about a day's worth of touch-up work when spring gets here to finish it up. And but like I said, I still get those calls, but I spent that first 10 years just dumping everything into it. And then I probably wasn't smart, but I started just completely cutting back almost all of my marketing. Well, I spent the next 8 to 10 years all on referrals. I mean, I literally, to hear someone say they were doing $500,000+ a year in a little small area of where we were working off of referrals only. You don't ever hear about that in the commercial world. Residential world, I know guys, that, you can go into some cul-de-sac and maybe do one roof and end up doing 6 roofs in that cul-de-sac. Commercial world doesn't work that way. I can go into an industrial park and do one roof, come back 90 days later, and there's 4 buildings done, and I don't have a clue who done them, and they don't have a clue who I am. It's just they don't eat at the same table. So to be able to say that I actually went almost 10 years without a marketing budget of zero, all on referrals, I felt like we'd done something pretty good and built and we could have been bigger. I didn't want to be. I did not want the employees. I told my brother, I'm like, I'll give you 1. If you need 2 employees, I'll do it because I'm out selling and all that. And I'm like, I am not going to be an adult babysitter. I just can't do it. I don't want to do it. I'm like, let's stay small. Let's put good money in our pocket and bust our butt from Easter to Thanksgiving. We work 6-7 days a week, all there through there. And as goes back to that redneck thing of, that hits into that late October and November time of deer hunting. So as you can get the pictures all on the wall, and I can't even spin the thing that above me here is all the way around like 18 different deer heads. So it's all wrapped around in here. But that is really, what drove us and got us to go is this strictly I would just show and tell. It's really what it was. I just show and tell. I had confidence in the product and I knew the product. I learned it. I researched it and I done my own. Heck, the first thing I coated was my dad's boat. And he had a big old 1856 aluminum well boat. And we took out all the green carpet off of it. And I took all the plywood top and bottom and I coated it solid white with our coatings and put granules on it. And I kid you not, that boat is sitting on the north side of my farm. And 80% of that is still intact. There's some spots that have gotten dry rotted and rotted now, 20+ years later, of a fishing boat. It wasn't a roof. It was a fishing boat. Took a beating for all those years. And that plywood is still on that boat, sitting right here. Setting out in my field, has been setting out every day since day one. And so I had confidence, in the product. And that's just really what drove me to, I just was young and dumb, and somebody said no. I'm like, whatever, I'll be back later. And I'd hit the same place half dozen times. Well, heck, they didn't remember me, or I talked to somebody different, so it didn't matter. I'd just be like, put in my little thing. Yep, I'll go back in about 90 days and talk to them again. And I did. If it rained day, I'd go back in. So I see you got another leak. And there was some of those buildings. I have one. I usually tell the story. It was my largest first spray foam job I ever did. And this was like probably 4 years into business. Didn't own I just was in the process of buying a foam rig, but I had went and cold called this place and they were like, yeah, we're very interested. We're taking bids. I'm like, holy cow, big old 65,000 square foot metal roof, mushroom factory. They actually, all of the mushrooms that go on Hardee's, oh gosh, what's the mushroom? Mushroom Swiss burgers, Hardee's. What was it? Let me think here. It was Hardee's, McDonald's, and Culver's wasn't a thing then. So I can't remember what. There was 3 main fast food chains that they make. There's a Monterey mushroom factory. They're actually based out of California. They grow all the mushrooms in caves out there. They ship them to central Missouri. They process them all there. and goes through, and they can them and put them in big, cans, all these things. Then they get shipped to all the restaurants. So we went in, and they had horrible issues. Well, being it's a food processing plant, leaks are a bad deal. That's a huge deal. And so they had to shut down areas because they'd get leaks on these metal buildings. Well, there's like 60 to 70 pipes on this roof. Well, part of those we found out is because they'd move their lines and they'd just leave old ones there. They'd just cut them off and leave them. I'm like, wind sitting there flopping on something that's not even attached anymore. It's like, guys, that's not that hard to fix. Let's just yank it out there and cover it. So we did we took off like 40 pipes before we started the job. But I landed that job by stopping in. They said they wanted a bid. So I gave them a bid and said, hey, when can I follow up? And the guy's like, hey, give me 3 weeks. So put in my calendar. 3 weeks later, I called him. His name was Ron Deerhoff. He passed away now, but I call him. I'm like, hey, Ron, what'd they say? He's like, Chad, we didn't get talked. It's going to be the next board meeting. It's on this day. Call me the Monday after. I did that for 3.5 years. Every time I called, I said, what's the next day that you're having the meeting, or do you think the decision? And I call him the Monday after it. And his exact words are, by the time we got into 1 year later, he said, the headquarters has already said, when the decision gets made to do the roof, you get the job, because you're the only contractor that followed up with us more than once. And you have stayed consistent and literally just followed up and said, okay, let me know. And didn't hassle, didn't haggle, just said, hey, when can I call you again? And I did that for 3.5 years. And the last time I called, he said, Chad, change the numbers on your bid, update them, resubmit them. And when can you start? And I thought he was joking. I'm like, yeah, right. We've done this for 3.5 years. And now this time you're telling me to come get signed contracts and get, literally at that point in time, this was a whole $250,000 project, back when spray foam was being sold at, $250 and $3 a foot, which, or not even that, probably, a little less than that. But so it was a big project. And at that point in time, he pulls the trigger, and I don't even own a foam rig. The guy that was going to be doing foam for me was so far behind, he couldn't get to me. So here I am. I buy a brand new foam rig and everything else, put it all together, show up at the job site. I'm up on the roof, and I'm like, literally walk up the roof, and we'd only sprayed one thing in my dad's barn. I'm up there. I'm like, okay, that looks good. Okay. And all of a sudden my brother walks up to me. He goes, Chad, don't turn around. I'm like, why? He's like, the plant manager and the maintenance guy are standing 10 foot behind you watching. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, Lord, please make this work. Make this look right. Make this look like that. At least I know what I'm doing. Had never sprayed a roof in my life. I'd had a bunch foam for me, so I knew what it, should do. And so I walk up to this pipe and I start spraying, and then I act like I just see them. I'm like, oh, they both had glasses. Thank the Lord they both had glasses on. I'm like, oh, guys, it will ruin your prescription glasses. You don't want to be up here at that. They're like, oh, we're sorry. And they walk off. They get off the ladder. I lay it down, and I'm sweating bullets, just like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And so, and then, because heck, the truck and the rig that I helped put together, it's $125,000 setup. It was not it was the real deal. And so I'm sitting there just sweating bullets, thinking I'm about to have a heart attack, but that thing went flawless other than some weather issues. Absolutely laid flawless. It was there for almost 15 years until a tornado came through and completely just demolished, took a bunch of things off another building and just looked like Chinese throwing stars across it, destroyed the whole thing. They ended up putting a single ply over everything, but because of insurance. And like I said, they just thought it was a little easier. They weren't really good on keeping maintenance anyway, but that was another one of those stories that kind of, like I said, the things you see in America, but that was all strictly on follow-up. And I tell, like I said, if we get to it here before we run out of time or keep going, but I've got a training that we're getting ready to do here in a week down in Nashville, a 2-day training. And that's one of the things we talk about is, guys, especially today's age, bringing the human relationship back into it, and the follow-up is, when they say the fortunes in the follow-up, that you can't put a number to it. People are so tired of getting text messages, getting phone calls, getting emails, getting all that face-to-face human interaction, and literally making a phone call and talking to people about the possibility of doing, business together. I don't think I don't think we'll ever replace it. And I don't think we should replace it. I think it should always be there. That's the part we all somewhat want to get lazy and let AI. And, I think it's awesome to use all that stuff to our benefit, but I kind of just go all the way back to what got me all that work in that first 12 months when I started doing it was just nothing but, and it was kind of funny as you're talking about how to walk in and here I am 21 years old, people look at me like how in it, but I used my education and used, just as I tell my mom says, just youthful ignorance, just the bliss of nobody's going to tell me no. I don't care. I'm like, I've already accomplished this. I've already went through 6 years of school before I could even buy a beer. I've already done this. I'm just like, and people will be like, I mean, if you've already done all that, I guess, if people ask me, I'll be like, hey, I got 6 years of civil engineering degree. If that helps you any bit, if that makes any decision for you. But I just basically told them the truth and told them what I thought we could do. And I was confident what I could do and probably overconfident, probably was more confident than I should have been. But, looking back, I guess it wouldn't change it.
Yeah, it worked, right? And I think there's a huge lesson there. I love what you just said because here's a great example. Yesterday morning, I'm here in San Antonio. There's a family that I met a couple weeks ago, and they have a massive problem with their roof. And we're going to take care of it. We're going to restore their faith in the roofing industry. But they had multiple people come out and try to fix this, and nobody quite figured out what was going on. Couldn't quite understand it. I saw a pipe that had duct tape on it. At some point, someone literally pulled duct tape out and tried to do the old duct tape on a residential roof. And I told the homeowner, hey, I'm going to send you over some information. And admittedly, I've kind of changed a little bit over the years to where I do send a lot of things via email because now, especially after COVID, it's kind of, people get a little weird about stuff and no, you don't need to come in the house or whatever. This was a family. I'd say they're both probably in their mid 70s, super nice. And I told the guy, hey, you know what? I can deliver this proposal to you through the internet, or I'd prefer to come over and just speak to you man to man, sit down, show you what we're going to do. And it was very refreshing, Chad, because I haven't really been able to do that for a couple years.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Last 2 years have been really crazy.
Yeah. And it's amazing because I sat down with him and I showed him the price and I half expected him to kind of be like, oh, but he didn't even flinch. He said, you're more expensive than the other guy, but you're sitting here. You told me you'd be here at 9:00. You showed up at 8:55. You have been consistent. When I call you, you answer the phone. If you don't, you call me right back and tell me, I was with somebody and how can I help? And we signed a paper contract yesterday, which that's the first time I signed a paper contract and I don't even remember how long, but it was awesome. And it brought me back to a simpler time. We're both about the same age. And it's like, I grew up in the era where I was told literally, you'll never be able to sell a roof on the internet. You've got to sit down in front of people. And obviously that's not true, but there's something really beautiful about sitting at someone's table and showing them, this is what we're going to do. This is why you should choose us. This is our expertise. This is the years of experience and having it work for you. So there's a huge lesson there for any youngster in the industry or anybody in sales in general. Sometimes, don't fix what ain't broke or whatever it is. And that's the human touch is always going to be there if you've got that capability.
My English teacher growing up, he would joke about our writing on any of our papers. He's like, give it the KISS method, the keep it simple, stupid. He's like, I want it being just like a woman's dress, long enough to cover up the subject, but short enough to keep it interesting. He's like, and he goes, when you get in conversations, those are the ones that people remember. And those are the ones that people want to talk to you again, because you're not there just blah, 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 blah about you and everything else. You're giving enough information to keep it interesting. So you're asking enough questions, qualifying questions to keep them thinking. But then you're also, you're getting to the details that you need to cover enough to where that conversation actually has value to that customer. And so that's one of the things, it is a different world. And when I talk to guys, and that's like with our training coming up, I talk to guys, I'm like, what worked in residential, I won't lie, doesn't always work in commercial because it's not Mr. Jones and his checkbook. It is, I've got to sell this to a board, of 6, 8, 10 people sometimes that all think that they may know something about roofing or especially churches are the worst. And I say that in a joking way. There's always somebody on a church board that was an old contractor and they are the hardest man on earth to sell. even if it's something that they are for, sometimes they're just like, oh, I'm an old contractor. I don't agree with that, And so, but like I said, just having those conversations that bring up the questions and give them, for one, to let them feel valued and to get to what matters. And is they want to feel like their problem's taken care of. They're not there to find out that you're going to make a profit. They're not there to know that the product had a class 4 impact rating and all of this. They want to know the issue I have this contractor setting in my kitchen, in my wherever, is that issue going to disappear by signing a contract with this guy and trusting him to do it in the store? Is the cost that it's going to cost worth what we're going to go through, and is he going to get that done? If he does, then that cost becomes irrelevant, because the issue is the issue, and they wouldn't be calling you if they were like, oh, I'm only going to call him because, we only have $10,000. I'm not going to call anybody because we don't have enough money. No, they're going to call because they have an issue and they want that fixed. And if you fit that, and I think that's where that human interaction of understanding and talking to ask those questions, it's so hard to do that over these screens. They're awesome, and we all wear them out and do all the stupid things that we, have messages come in here and everything else, and all of these things. But it's just, there's nothing you can take away from the face-to-face stuff.
You're right. And I think it's an awesome thing. It's a timeless classic that's never going to go away. And we're going to continue to have fun doing that. So let's move forward a little bit here. You were talking a little bit about the Roof Rabbit, which is a amazing invention. At IRE, I got a chance to really lay my eyes on this. And one thing that struck me was I didn't quite understand exactly what the Roof Rabbit was, because I don't have a lot of coding experience. I'm more of a residential guy. Here shortly, I'm going to ask you how I can change that. But I see this invention here, and it's like, first thing that impressed me was the two gentlemen that were there were from, I think, England. And it's like, man, they came from across the world to see this.
They wore me out. Oh my gosh. They came by again after you left. Those dudes wore me out, man. I was like, holy cow. I'm going to start charging you guys for the minutes in the booth, man. They were absolutely into it.
Let's talk about the Roof Rabbit. Okay. You get into this, like you said, you're a small operation size wise as far as the number of people, but you're doing humongous projects. And I can imagine at some point you're standing there with a hose, just kind of back and forth. You recognize the need. Okay, if we can kind of duplicate this process or maybe multiply it out across the board, we could get these jobs done more efficiently, more effectively. Tell me a little bit about the concept of the Roof Rabbit, how it came about in your mind, how you built it, and what it can do to help with productivity and efficiency in the marketplace.
My wife gets mad at when I say this, and I'm like, it's honestly nothing but redneck engineering. It really is. And she hates it when I say that. It's like, you're just bound down yourself. I'm like, no, I don't have a problem. The word redneck does not bother me a bit. I'm an absolute Southern back kick that likes to hunt and fish. And if that's a redneck, then sign me up. Sign me up. So we were literally on a job. This is what's funny is we were on this job that was roughly 1,250 squares of standing seam metal roof, SSR panel, trapezoid, whatever people want to call it, SSR. And so me and my brother, just the two of us, we're doing this job ourselves. We'd already finished everything and cleaned it and done all the horizontal seams and everything else, and we're coating it. And we coat this first day. And, we're taking turns to where we're trying to keep our backs from just locking up where you look like the Hunchback of Notre Dame. And so we're coating all that, and we're taking our time, really slowing down, kind of staying back, watching, having the other guy watch and saying, hey, you got a light spot, pay attention there. We do this all day. We come back the next day, and it looked like Ray Charles had coated it. There was light spots everywhere. And it's like, we look at each other, and I'm like, well, that was your section. And he's like, what about there? And I'm like, I'm not sure what happened there. I don't think that was mine either. That, I'm the boss, by golly, I'm like you. So I joked with my brother on the roof. I was like, man, it's like, when we leave today, I'm going to go and I'm going to get all the parts and I'm going to try and build something that actually will spray two heads on both sides, because the pump capability is there. And, because most of these pumps we're using are running 3.5 to 4 gallons a minute, and our one tip's going to put out 1.25 gallons. So I'm like, we have 3 times the amount of volume and potential, but we're only getting this one tip out. And I was like, you know what? So I'm going to build something. And of course, my brother, being the older brother, is 5.5 years older than me. He's like, yeah, you talk a big talk and you don't ever do anything you're saying you're doing, and all this stuff. And I'm like, you watch, I'm going to. So I literally when we left, he's like, what are you doing? I was like, I'm going to Home Depot. And he's like, are you serious? I want to go home. I've been on a roof for 12 hours or whatever. I'm like, no, I told you I'm doing it. By golly, we're doing it. So I walked into Home Depot, bought a couple pair of wheels, walked in and bought as much aluminum stock as I could. They didn't have much. So I went to Lowe's, picked up some more stuff, went to 2 or 3 home stores, and then went back, kind of drew out what I wanted. And like so the drafting degree started working in my head, and I'm sitting there drawing these things out. And then we got a buddy who built on our race car. He's a certified TIG welder, and he builds all these roll cages, for NHRA cars and stuff like that. So I just said, hey, what would it cost? And he's like, well, bring me what you got. And I was like, at that time I didn't drink, but I'm like, I know how to get to it. I know how to get him to do whatever I want. So I showed up with a whole bunch of aluminum and some wheels and a 12-pack and said, here's your payment. I'll hold and cut and do whatever. And you just literally drop the shield, weld when I tell you to, and we're going from there. So we spent about 2 hours in his shop welding all this Frankenstein together. And, by the time we left, he's looking at me like, what in the heck? Don't tell anybody that my name's on that. I don't know what that is, but do not let anybody know. So we take it and we go up to that roof the following Monday, and we hooked her up. And in 4 days, me and my brother knocked out that 125,000 square foot roof with just the two of us. And, I still to this day tell anybody that 2 guys sprayed 125,000 feet in 4 days, they just look you right in the eye and saying you're a bold-faced liar. There's no way you did it. And I'm like, if I wouldn't have been involved myself, I'd have probably told you the same thing. But I'm like, we did. I'm like, it was unreal what we accomplished. And so then we got to look at each other, and I'm like, wait a second, we could use this on it. We start naming all the different roofs that we had lined up that I was like, man, we could have used it there. We could have used it there. So I started putting it on. We put it on every roof we could get it on. And it was archaic. It, had a literally 2-gallon bucket of caulking was my counterweight that weighed about 40 pounds, so getting it on the roof, it didn't bend. It just, this big old monstrosity. The guys loved using it. They just hated getting it there, setting it up, cleaning it, and all this stuff. But it kind of, put that in my head that we could use it. So we ran for about the next 3 to 4 years with it, done a couple million square feet with it. And then it just gradually didn't get used as much because guys just hated dragging it out, and I think they let it get clogged up a couple times on purpose so they didn't have to use it because it was such a hassle.
Shucks.
And they're like, dang it, well, yeah, we'll clean that. We'll get to it next time, And so that kind of got shoved on the back shelf. Well, I was doing some training for a manufacturer and had about, 8, 9 maybe contractors on a job site. And we were up there doing some actual hands-on training and getting them some field experience. And we're all over here on this like 650 square job. And we're over here on the halfway to the south part. Well, on the north half, I had 2 guys with that rig. I broke it back out doing a recoat on this recoat. And all the guys I'm trying to train and teach, they're all I keep them looking. They're just all, I'm like, here, guys. And, we're looking at it. And they're all over just like, yeah, I'm like, what are you guys? And I look up and I'm like, oh, crap. I forgot that was over there. And I'm like, they're like, what is that? What the heck is that guy pushing? I was like, nothing. It's just a little thing I threw together. It's no big deal. Just leave, don't worry about it. Well, little did I know, before the end of the day, obviously, they were all up watching it work and everything else. Little did I know, we're talking early, like most people, half the people that I knew didn't even have a Facebook account or nothing like that. It was before Facebook. And somebody took out an old Nokia 1.8 megapixel phone, flip phone, nice, and shot about a 10-second video of us using that. I didn't know that happened because there wasn't no social media at that time, really. And like I said, this is in the early 2000s. And 3-4 years down the road, I get a phone call, and a guy's like, hey, you sell that equipment? I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, that sprayer equipment. I'm like, dude, I don't have any spray equipment. I thought he was talking about sprayer. I was like, I actually was rude. I'm like, dude, I don't have nothing. I'm sorry. You got the wrong guy. Hung up on him. Hour later, I get another call, and I'm like, asking the same thing. You sell that piece of equipment? I'm like, what are you? And it took 2 days for me to try and figure out what the heck these people were talking about, because I didn't have nothing for sale, was never producing nothing, not trying to sell nothing, didn't even know what they're talking about. Well, finally, I tracked it down. By about the 6th call, I was like, okay, we got to talk about this. Where are you seeing this at? And he's like, well, on Facebook. Well, I didn't even have a Facebook account at that time. And so I found somebody that had one and had them try and search and find this, and I find this video and I'm like, what the heck? Well, then I start tracking back and find out who posted the video. Well, one of the guys I found out was there that day, posted the video or sent the video to somebody. He posted it. And so that's kind of where I guess you could say the initial desire of guys, the contractors in the field, seeing it going, wait a second, I can see that working. Well, the wife, after these 6 phone calls, she's like, well, why don't you see what it takes to reproduce that? And I'm like, nope, don't have any desire. She's like, no, just, maybe it could be something you can sell. I'm like, no, there ain't no way guys are going to pay what I would want for it and need to, to make it work. And I'm like, no. Well, I lost the fight, and 3 days of rain just so happened to show up. And she's like, well, looky here, look at the forecast. You're not going to be roofing for the 3 days. So look what you get to do. And I'm like, Dad, come it. So she won the battle, and I went out and started looking and found a manufacturer, thank the Lord, just literally 20 minutes from my house. That was a farming. They do a lot of farm implement stuff, and they do a lot of welding, and just took it to them and said, hey, here's what I have. And I drew up everything, showed them my old one. Then I drew up what I wanted and left those 2 there and said, work your magic and help me get this to light. And so they called me about a week later and says, come take a look at this. I think you're going to like it. So I show up, and I joke about this day. It was like watching my daughter, my firstborn, be born. I was like, I'm in there. My wife's like, are you crying? I'm like, no. It's like dusty in here or something, And I literally, it was one of those, the thought of having something come out of your brain, design something, then have it come to actual life into something that is like literally made on, CNC and welded, TIG welded, and all these things that actually go into, 100 something pieces we put into one to make one. And to know that is actually like, duplicatable down to the degree and all these things, it was actually emotional for me because I couldn't believe that it came from that to this. And so that one we started, and we moved 3 or 4, started moving 3 or 4 of those, and had some issues with shipping and things. So I had to reevaluate because every time I'd ship one, it'd get damaged. They were bending. FedEx, don't ship your valuables with FedEx or UPS or any of those because they don't. I mean, there's a couple of these, I swear, they ran over them with 18-wheelers. I mean, they were so destroyed. I'm like, how do you destroy, a 40-pound box full of aluminum? And they destroyed them. I mean, couldn't even salvage it. We had to just start over. And so I was like, we found out there was some leverage being done when they were doing things that was bending things. So we had to repackage it down and make it into 2 pieces and all this stuff. But now we're to the point now we really haven't made any changes now in about 3 years, and consistently selling several hundred of them a year, just drip along. We sell, we'll sell 2 or 3 here, 2 or 3 here. And I still have not turned it into my full-time business. It's supposed to be my way out of roofing, I guess. So I haven't really dumped everything that probably it deserves. I kind of feel bad about it, but we have all these other things that still go on, but it still feeds quite a bit of our business. But it's really starting to grow. We're really starting to see it's got itself in the, I've got, I guess, enough social proof now in the industry after 5 years that I get referrals from people every day. And like I said, it's been kind of crazy. I mean, I think we've sold, we've probably sold 10 or 12 in the last 2 weeks, and this is not even really for the Midwest, especially. We're not quite roofing season. We're 31 degrees this morning and rain all day today. And so we've got a couple of weeks before we can do anything in the Midwest. But, we're selling, I've got them going to Florida. I've got them going to Texas. I've got them going to, South Carolina and Alabama. And, they're going all over. But it's been a pretty cool ride. And I'll throw you a little story that most people don't get to hear this. That is kind of 2 little stories that the word roof rabbit. Well, 2, I'll take my bald head off here. If you actually see the logo, what's crazy about it is me and my wife drew that up driving down the interstate, looked up and seen a sign that was called R&R Auto, and the R's were back to each other. And I looked up and saw the sign. She looked up and saw the sign. And I'm like, are you thinking what I'm thinking? And she driving down the interstate at 70 miles an hour, she grabs a napkin, draws it out, hands me a piece of paper. I'm drawing with my knee, and I'm like, on the count of 3, and we literally lay them out, and they are as close as you can be to copying each other as possible. And she's the one that drew the little bitty bunny on top, and that was her own little drawing. She just sketched it. It's like, here, we'll put a little rabbit on the top, and then the sprayers are the two heads of the sprayer. What's crazy is, and I didn't even know this I didn't even recognize it till almost a year into it. But if you actually look at where the red and everything else is, if you actually see a physical unit of mine and look at it from the side, the plates are like a letter D. Then the back leg comes down and the front goes down. It actually makes this right here. Like, so if you took those plates and spread it, this is the design. If you actually took an outline of our unit, and there's no way to explain that because this one was not even the one that was designed yet when we came up with this logo. We still had some of the changes that made it to look like this. So that was, again, a God thing, whatever you want to say. It was a pretty cool thing to know that, and then, the funniest thing is the guys ask me, how do you come up with the word roof rabbit? Where does that come from? And that maybe you may have even was going to ask that. Well, I was running on a job one day and stopped in the parking lot doing something, and is actually a Conklin guy showed up, and he was Amish. There's several Amish in their company and everything else, and has that strong German accent and still doing a Pennsylvania Dutch, whatever you want to call it. And he's sitting there and he's like, what's he doing up there? And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, what's he pushing around? He thought it was a power washing or something. And I was like, I said, it's just a little spray cart that we have. And his German voice, he started laughing. He goes, well, he looks like a rabbit that's stuck behind a fence and just don't have a clue where he's going. And I was like, so you're saying that he looks like a roof rabbit? And he goes, yeah, he's a roof rabbit. He just goes back and forth, back and forth. And I was like, well, you know what? I think I'll call it a roof rabbit as a joke. And that's been now, oh my gosh, probably 2005, 2006 when he said that, and it's coined since then and stuck. And that's what, we used all those years later when I started producing it. Well, my wife is a has been a Christian life coach for a few years for women. And one of the studies that they do, or one of the things they do is they go into the Hebrew and Latin, all the words, and they look at your kids' names. They help you to find out the actual origination of those names where people name people. Because we always talk about our names always mean something, whether we know it or not. There's a name, there's something behind all of it. Well, my name is Chad Warren Hedrick. Chad Hedrick's all CWH. So me and my brothers were all CWH. Well, my wife all of a sudden comes in one day just bawling and crying. And I was like, what is wrong with you? One of those questions you're like, oh, do I want to ask you? And she's like, Chad, do you understand that the rabbit has been destined all your life? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Well, the word Warren actually stands for a group of rabbits. And it's one of those, what do you say about it? My mom and dad named me 50 years ago, and my middle name actually broken down into its original term is a group or bundle of rabbits. And here I am, that what I'm known for in the industry and everything else 50 years later is something as funny as called the roof rabbit that was coined by an Amish guy. So I'm like one of those, say what you want about it, but it's when she told me and I had hair, it just like cold chills. I'm just like, that is kind of the craziest things. You can't write that story.
Nope. That was your destiny right there, my friend. And I love that. That is awesome, because I would have never in my wildest dreams imagined that this is how Roof Rabbit came about. And this is where the name came from. This is terrific stuff. So you've got the Roof Rabbit, you're producing it, you're sending it all over the country. You got guys from all over the world that are inquiring about it. It all started off a 10-second Nokia video that you knew nothing about, which is insane, but why not, right? God bless America. That's so right, beautiful.
Exactly.
So let's kind of switch topics just a tad bit. I was going to ask you about this. So there are a lot of people like myself that are residential-based contractors. I've been in roofing for 27 years. I've got a very limited commercial background. I've done a couple coating jobs in my life. I've done a couple commercial deals, but nothing really to speak of. I found that a lot of these guys like myself are intrigued by what you're doing and think, you know what, that looks kind of cool. I like the fact that he's got two guys and he's putting these big jobs together, and the overhead isn't really killing you, and it's something that you can be very profitable with. But I think much like myself, a lot of people you fear the unknown. you hear these stories about things that could get screwed up, and you hear about
Perceived
these
liability.
Yeah, exactly. And you hear about, well, so-and-so was doing a coating and he messed it up, and, it ate through the roof, or whatever could possibly happen. So let's just say that there's someone like myself, wink, wink, who would like to maybe pursue a little bit more of this commercial restoration, kind of get into doing what you've made your life doing now. What's some advice that you have for a guy like that would be wanting to do it, that's interested, but just doesn't know how to get started, doesn't know where to look, doesn't know anything about the products? What's a good way for someone to diversify their business, add a little commercial work to it potentially, and to not have the fear that something could go terribly wrong?
Part of this will probably end up sound like I am like trying to pat myself on the back or anything else, because it's something that I've had so many guys ask me this, that literally it was about 5 years ago I started it, but over the last 90 to 120 days, we actually completely, from start of like literally picking a name to chemistry to everything, threw together an entire online curriculum called Spraying for Profits. It's an online curriculum for guys that want to get into the coatings industry. And part of that is I really feel that the industry gets, like I said, the chuck in the truck. Sorry. I'm sure you've heard that a truck, so it's all good. But the issue, because our industry has actually allowed, guys can go down to Home Depot and buy a bucket, and that gives them they can go put on a roof. And so what I tell guys is, for one, a lot of guys don't realize that they probably have more commercial contacts than they think they do. My nose will get at you. I'm stinging sinuses this time of year. But and I tell people, one of the quickest ways I've helped a lot of guys get involved that were existing residential contractors was, for one, obviously you have to get whatever way you decide to do it. You have to get yourself educated on what's out there, what's available, and what is going to best fit my business or my method of installs, or my crew, or however we're going to do it. And then I always have tons of guys tell me, well, I just don't come across a lot of commercial work or commercial opportunities. And, we get to start asking questions, and, I'll have somebody that, will say it's Chuck Shingles, Chuck's, residential roofing. And I'm like, well, guess what? A lot of people don't call the dentist who have, a heart issue. I mean, like that, you have to know from the get-go, you have to treat this, even if you have an existing roofing company, start a second division, start a second company name. I don't care if you run them under the same entity and tax-wise, I don't care. That don't matter. But start a separate division or a company that actually is tailored and focused to your end client. Because there's so many in the commercial world, a commercial contractor or a commercial client, 90% of the time is not going to hire Joe's Residential Roofing or Tom's Gutters, or I don't care if you're the best coating company in the world. If your company is, Chuck's Shingles or Chuck's Remodeling, the commercial clients aren't calling you. You're not going to get that lead. It's just, and so I have all these people tell me, oh, well, we don't get that. So but then all these guys who have all these residential past clients, like you said, you've been in the industry now. Granted, I know roofers are not great. And I say this in the wrong way sometimes. It makes some guys mad, but I'm just like, I've met a whole lot of roofers that are really good roofers that are horrible businessmen, are horrible bookkeepers. I've been there. One of them still pretty bad at it. But I tell guys, if you have any remote chunk of past business, there's three types of people. Someone who works in a commercial building, owns a commercial building, or knows someone who works or owns a commercial building. There's very few people on this earth you're going to meet that don't fit that three. So the goal is to go to all the existing people that you have and have done work with over, I don't care how long, if you had a good opportunity that when you worked with them and had a really good relationship with them, and allow them to make sure they know what you're doing, what you're attempting to do and that referral business is, we teach guys in our trainings that I'm getting ready to do here next week. One of the things is we send out a referral letter. We type up a Form 4 letter that says, here's what we're getting into. And then if they refer a business, we'll pay up to $1,000 for any referred business. You want to talk about watching people spread the word? And when somebody does that, you take a picture. Now, I know today in social media it's a little tougher, but you can actually take a picture of you hand them the big check. That's $1,000. You know, I don't care. We cover the taxes. We've always done. We'll just cover the taxes. I don't care. They're liable for nothing, but they get this, check. And then we put it in their local, especially if you're in little areas of different, like we are in the country, we put it in their hometown paper and our hometown paper. And then you'll be amazed at how many people will call you. Well, if I send you a lead and you close the job, well, can I get that? Sure can. We pay them 3% up to $1,000. You won't, you get some single mom who works at some factory that she knows the maintenance man, and she calls you and says, hey, Tom Schultz is the plant manager of this place where I work, and we've got horrible roof leaks. You think you could help us? And you go in and sell that, and you give her $1,000. That might be literally 2 weeks of work for her. That might be what keeps her lights on in the middle of what. It's game changer. And then that people buy into that, and you create that community of, you can take a small company and make it look like a big player. And the same thing, we sponsor Little League ball teams. I've been a Little League ball coach for 15 years. So, that's part of it. But we would sponsor in a town where we lived and worked. I'd sponsor ball clubs. I would sponsor any little event that kids, because grandparents are the ones who own 90% of, that was the age of group that owned 90% of the buildings in Columbia, Missouri and Jeff City, Missouri. I was not a German Catholic, so I didn't fit in. I was not part of the clique, so I had to figure out how to get in the clique and do it. So I jumped on everything I could, and we would start doing and absolutely, we took from what we were as a little bitty 3-man company, and we're doing the numbers in areas that the local union company was literally, would do everything they could to try and do things to us, because they couldn't stand us, because we were taking jobs from them left and right as a 3-man company, and just literally setting ourselves aside by getting involved in. And I tell guys, most in a commercial, most times you're going to be dealing with what I call the Titanics. The larger roofing companies, that's all the people's names that you think about is when you go into, you say commercial roofing for San Antonio. I guarantee you can probably name 8 or 10 big companies that are there that are, millions of dollars. What the smaller guy doesn't understand or doesn't think about is, if you're in a kayak and there is a rock coming in front of you, it takes 2 swipes of the paddle and you're around the kayak. If you're in a cruise ship and you're getting ready to hit an iceberg, they can't do that. They have to think so much farther down the road to implement anything. So those guys got to do this great big swerve. Then they got to counteract to get back to where they were back online to get things steamrolling. Well, as the smaller companies, those up to $1-2 million companies, you can make decisions on a Friday and put it in place on Monday. And, and as long as you've got the right decisions and you're basing them on the right things, you can make things so quick change that those big companies can't, because they got to have a meeting here. They got to do a board meeting. They got to talk about 6 guys. They've got to learn this before we can implement it, before we'll ever put our name to it. And that allows the smaller guys to dive into some of these commercial roofs and all these things and be able to go face to face and do that. Those big companies, 9 out of 10 of them will not send someone face to face to. They're trying to do it all through their marketing programs and all those things. So that is really, I tell guys, work in your strength. If you're a 5-7 man crew, or 5 to 7 employee company that's doing $1-2 million or something like that, dude, you are so nimble compared to the whales that are out there in commercial. You can do so many things that they can't do. And you're not, I'm not saying you don't want to be a $50 million company, but a lot of the guys who are $50 million companies, if the guys that at the 2 to 5 range seen what they were dealing with, they'd never want to be a $50 million company. They'd stay right there at that 2 to 3. And I'll tell you right now, and people think crazy, I've always wanted to be and stayed in this $1 to $3 million range at 60% profit instead of a $40 million company that's at 5 to 7 take home. Don't have any desire for it. Yes, more power to them. Happy for them. That's great. I can do everything I want to do at a, low 7 figures and just absolutely maximize every dollar we can make out of systems and equipment and make every job more profitable. Don't need the overhead. Don't need the employees. Don't need the headaches. Don't need all that stuff. And you write your own destiny. They're putting up buildings faster than we can code them. That's crazy. Right now they said 2024, 4.42 billion. 2034, they're calling it to be a $9.4 billion business is what the industry's worth. In 10 years, we're going to double. When in 2010, we were at, 2.8. So from 2010 to 2024, we went from 2.8 to a little over 4 million. So we almost doubled there in that year. And now, that's cool when you're 1 to 2 million. That's neat. You doubled. But when you take something that's already pushing 5 billion and they're saying it's looking at a growth rate of going to hit 10 billion in today's economies, that's a number to pay attention to. I mean, it's out there. There's more opportunities out there than guys realize. And like I said, we through some of our consulting, our trainings, all those things, we do a lot of, and we have an entire list of things that we teach guys of ways to, everything from setting themselves aside when they're cold calling to, list and using technology and all this stuff. And it's something that I don't know too many things that you can actually make the kind of profit margins we can by offering a legitimate long-term solution. We're not just going up there and, slapping on some coatings and calling it a roof and walking off and getting paid. It's not scamsters. There's actually, like I said, 2 of the roofs I installed, I was talking about are still 25 years old, never been touched. I mean, I can get pictures of them anytime I want. They're still sitting there they're not near as wide as they were 25 years ago, but they're still there performing. And I don't know how long they're going to go before they do something with it, And so, that gives me the ability to sleep at night in the peace, knowing that we're in a system and an industry that's sustainable. And, literally my article in roofing contractor, I think, 25th, 26th of March, something like that. One of the, was talking about 66% increase of all the commercial companies that they talked to. 66% of them were saying they had a massive increase in what they were going to do with coatings over the next 2 years. It's coming. There's no, I thought back in those early days when I got started, I seen the growth. I thought, oh my gosh, we'll never see growth like this.
Here we are.
That was like this. Now we're like this. It's literally, it ain't going nowhere. I know a lot of guys call us painters and everything else, and the guys hate on it. I understand that they can hate on it all they want, but I don't call myself a coater. We don't coat roofs. We don't paint roofs. We put on fluid applied roofing systems. And that's the difference. We don't just go up and coat something. There's a step-by-step methodical process and quality control that goes into everything we do from start to finish till we walk off to be able to go to sleep. I mean, I got guys right now, this exact moment, we're on Boeing in California doing a job right now. I've got guys on Central Florida University doing 1,000 squares, and we just left 3,500 squares on Disney last month. I mean, you don't have the words Disney, University of Central Florida, and Boeing as your clients if the system and the products don't work. I mean, and we're being contacted because they're speccing it, not just because we went in and cold called them. Obviously, you don't cold call those 3 type of people. They are literally being brought to us because of they want coatings on their job.
That's it. And man, I'll tell you what, you got me excited. This has been one of the most awesome episodes of Keepin' It Rio. I have learned so much. I've enjoyed the stories that you've shared, your journey from, your early days, building bridges. Now you're literally transforming the industry. You're changing the way that it's perceived by the masses. And I can't thank you enough for taking the time to be here. We're going to start winding it down a little bit because like everything, like you say, we got to keep it just interesting enough that they want more somewhere down the road. So people that are watching this episode, I think you've brought a ton of value, not just in commercial roofing, fluid applied systems, but in business in general, mindset, all of that stuff. People that watch this are, for the most part, pretty intelligent. And I think that they like to learn more about some of the things that we discuss on the episode. So somebody's watching this episode right now and they're like, man, this guy Chad is pretty awesome. I'd like to learn some more about him. I'd like to follow him a little bit. I'd like to maybe get into one of his trainings. What are some of the best ways that people can find you, can reach you, can learn from you to help with that expansion? Like you said, we're going to need more qualified people to maintain the growth. So I think you're one of the leading authorities in this, and I think there's nobody better to help. How do people make this happen?
Well, I can, if they listen along, they heard that my wife actually done me an amazing, absolutely amazing favor and completely rebuilt all of our social and website and everything else. So, if you see there below my name, Roof Coating Life is basically, that's our headquarters. So roofcoatinglife.com is our homepage. And from there you can go to look at all the stuff about Roof Rabbit. You can go to the episodes that are already currently up for all of our podcasts. Which is the Roof Coating Life podcast. And then you can turn around and go from there into our live events. As of right now, like I said, we have one in Nashville, Tennessee, 11th and 12th that we're doing. I've got one coming up. We're going to be doing one. As of right now, the plan looks like Kansas City, Dallas, and then possibly one on the East Coast. And then maybe we might finish up one in Denver. We're not sure yet, but we're going to do at least 2 or 3 in the next few months. So like I said, we'll probably do one a month for the next several months. I coach Little League Baseball, so I'm tied up here for a little bit on games, but got the one coming up here in Nashville down 11th and 12th, and that's if I can get there after all the rain that they're getting today. They're calling for 10 inches in Memphis today. Wow. 8 inches were hit last night in Northeast Arkansas, and there's already flooding everywhere. So it's they're talking like 1,000-year rainstorm just hit that area today and tonight and into tomorrow. And like I said, so hopefully we can still get there to do that one. But so that is probably one of my easiest. And obviously, all the social media stuff, it's most of it is either Roof Coating Life or I do have an issue there that kind of bothers me is about 18 months ago, somebody hacked our Roof Rabbit site or hacked my Facebook account. I lost a 20,000 follower on or 16,000 followers, I think, on Roof Rabbit. They locked me out of everything else. So our new Roof Rabbit page has like 65 people. So that kind of hurt when they got in there and destroyed all that. I lost my personal page. So I have like 600 friends when I was maxed out at 5,000. Lost all of that. Fought them for 2 years over it, and Facebook won't give it back to me because they posted some very sick, disgusting videos that they need dealt with over, but that's another day. But so my social media is basically mostly Chad Hedrick, and then I think my Instagram's my name, and then we've got the Roof Rabbit Facebook page, and so LinkedIn still under my name, but not very hard to find if you look anything to do with coatings. There's very few forums or very few places they won't see me involved in. Usually probably speaking up when I maybe should keep my mouth shut. Just maybe sometimes have to say a few things to get at least a couple points in there to make sure guys understand some of the stuff that's being said. Might not be best news to follow, but like I said, the Spraying for Profits Live is our event. So that will be the website. We actually go with all of our live events. So Spraying for Profits Live. We'll give you, we'll have our schedules up as soon as our agendas are put up for those. We'll have those scheduled up, and they can register and get those. They are going to be one of a kind. I can promise that. One thing about these is we're not sponsored by any manufacturers. So there's no specific system. There's no specific product, nothing of that. It's all coming from the contractor side. I took everything of my business for 25 years from starting, like I said, as we talked a while ago about literally business name, through all the marketing, through all the ways we made ourselves look completely different. And people think we were a huge company when we were literally nobody. And all that, along with some new absolute, I don't know if I want to call them space age, but some new things that are, one of them brand new to the market. One of them hasn't even hit the market yet. That's going to be released in Nashville. That will absolutely change lead generation for the good. You're not going to get the guy calls and says, I can give you 20 new installs, Chuck. But if you'll just answer this, I can give you 20 new installs next week, But we've got some pretty cool stuff coming down the line that are going to absolutely, especially on the commercial game, is going to really help guys be able to break into the commercial game. And I call it an aerial assault on marketing, basically. And it's going to be pretty awesome.
I love it, man. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to be at the one in Dallas. I give you 100% my word.
You got a pretty good list. You got a pretty good list going for Dallas already. Where my wife actually we were just talking about that. She was going to try and get the reg link up for that because I've already got of people who have messaged me. We've probably got a dozen already. So I've got to look at, like, this one here we're doing has only got a 30. I'm booked at 30. Well, the one in Dallas, I don't think a 30 room is going to hold me. I'm afraid we're going to definitely have to make it a little bigger because I don't think 30 is going to hold it.
I hope not, because I hope that, we could put it at AT&T Stadium and you could fill Jerry World. You know what I mean? And I think
maybe
awesome.
Maybe I can hook up with Tyler and the guys down at Dude Perfect, and we can do it in one of their.
There you go. Or Ryan Stewman. He was a guest on my show. Ryan Stewman.
Yeah, Ryan. Yeah, Ryan puts it on. Yeah, Ryan Stewman. Yeah, great guy. There we go. There's another one.
We'll figure something out. So I appreciate you, Chad. This has been absolutely a blast. I have enjoyed every second of our conversation. Before we bid adieu to the fans today, I want to offer you the opportunity anytime that you would ever like to come back. We could continue our conversation when the new innovations come out, when the new things come out into the market. We can discuss them and have a great time doing so. I can't thank you enough.
I'll give you a wink. I got a new piece of equipment that I'm hoping if things work out in the next 90 days, will be out. That if it does what my head says it should do and what it looks like the design should do. I have the guys who are welding and building up. Their exact words are, "You won't even worry about producing the roof rabbit because this one will absolutely." It's not a coating piece of equipment. It's involved in the roofing industry, but they're in the roof coating industry actually. But they're like, this will surpass the roof rabbit 10-1 if it does what it should do. And it's scary, exciting, because I'm like, dadgummit, when the guy who built it, he says he wants one, and he's not even in the roofing industry. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I would love to. I'd love to share that when we kind of get that going.
Absolutely. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen, because we've got more stuff coming. So before we say goodbye, I always have to do my one final thing, which is to thank my sponsor, Roofer. Roofer.com is my sponsor here for the last 3 years on Keepin It Rio. In the roofing industry, I'm sure you've heard of Roofer and seen them around in some of the shows. And they are the all-in-one tool for roofing contractors, from the initial contact with your homeowner all the way through the process to the final payment collection. Roofer takes care of it all. I've watched them grow for the last 6 years, and I have nothing but love for everybody at Roofer. I thank them for being a sponsor. What's that?
I said, even Matt. We even like Matt Radford. I mean,
Matt's the man. I'll tell you what. He's a good dude.
Pulled me out of a couple. I've had a couple times when I had one actually. I'm like, Matt, I sent him a message. I'm like, I hate to ask you guys, is there any way you can give me a report on this? Because this guy, sends me one. I'm like, this can't be right. And he'd pull up, did he run me a report and just said, is this what you need? I'm like, yeah. He, just use their software, and he's a awesome guy. And he pulled up, he's like, is that what you needed to look at? I'm like, yes, you just clarified what this guy I know is wrong. So thank you. You just won the battle for me. Thank you.
That's it. So, yeah, Matt Radford and Roofer. They do amazing things. So thank you to Roofer. Thank you to all the people that watch Keepin It Rio, that like, share, subscribe, tell their friends. This is a pretty diverse program. It's not just roofing. So to everybody that watches, I love you guys. I appreciate you. Until next Thursday, when we do this all again, like I always end every episode, I like to say, keep on keeping it Rio. And I'm going to end the episode with a 20-second ad for Roofer. Chad, if you would stick around for just a second, you and I will have final conversation after this, but I will see you guys next Thursday. Thank you for watching, and I hope you guys got as much out of this as I did. See you next week.
We're Roofer. We know that managing a roofing business can be chaotic, so we created a single platform with all the tools you need to easily run your roofing business. Stop switching between multiple different softwares and experience streamlined operations from lead to payments in hours instead of days. Visit roofr.com to get started for free today.